I was lying in a hospital bed, recovering from emergency surgery, when my father called to ban me from the upcoming family reunion. He laughed, claiming I ruined the mood. He forgot I paid for his truck, the electricity, and the party itself. So, I canceled it all. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The sterile smell of antiseptic always made me nauseous, but today it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I was lying in a recovery room, the steady beep 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 of the monitor acting as a metronome for my throbbing headache. I had just come out of an emergency appendectomy 3 hours ago. My abdomen felt like it had been set on fire, and my throat was dry as sandpaper. I was vulnerable, weak, and desperately lonely. I had texted the family group chat the moment I was being wheeled in. Heading into emergency surgery. Love you guys. 3 hours later, as the anesthesia fog began to lift, I reached for my phone with a trembling hand, expecting to see a flood of worried messages. Maybe a missed call from my mother, Martha, or a text from my sister, Rebecca, asking if I was okay. There was nothing, not a single notification. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to convince myself they were just busy. They were preparing for the annual family reunion barbecue, after all, an event I funded every single year. Maybe they were just deep in preparations. Then my phone buzzed. It was a call, Dad. A wave of relief washed over me. Thomas was calling. He must have seen the message late. I cleared my throat, trying to sound stronger than I felt. Hi, Dad, I rasped, my voice cracking. I'm out of surgery. It went okay, just. Nicola, he interrupted. His voice wasn't warm. It was loud, booming against a background of laughter and clinking glasses. He wasn't calling to check on me. He was on speakerphone. Oh, I said, confusion clouding my mind. Hi, did you get my text? I'm at St. Jude S. The doctor said. I didn't call to hear about your stomach ache, Nicola, Thomas said, his tone sharp and dismissive. I called to talk about Saturday. Saturday, the barbecue? I shifted in the bed, wincing as the stitches pulled tight. I might be a little slow, but I'm hoping to be discharged tomorrow, so I should be able to make it. I bought the brisket yesterday before the pain started, so I just need to. Yeah, about that, he cut in again. This time I heard a distinct giggle in the background. It sounded like Rebecca. Don't come. The room went silent. The beeping monitor seemed to grow louder. What? Don't come, Nicola, Thomas repeated, enunciating every word slowly as if speaking to a child. We've been talking, your mother, Rebecca, and I, and we decided it's better if you just sit this one out. I don't understand, I whispered, gripping the cold metal rail of the bed. Is it because of the surgery? Dad, I can just sit in a chair. I won't be in the way. Thomas laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound that I had heard him use on telemarketers or neighbors he despised. It's not the surgery, Nicola. God, you're always so dramatic. It's you. Me. You're a buzzkill, he said flatly. You come around with your suits and your work talk and your schedule. You make everyone uncomfortable. Rebecca says she feels judged every time you look at her. Martha says she can't relax because you're always reorganizing the kitchen. We're tired of pretending, Nicola. My heart hammered against my ribs faster than the monitor could track. Pretending. Pretending to like you, he said. The cruelty of the sentence hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the room. We're tired of pretending we enjoy your company. You're stiff, you're boring, and frankly, nobody wants you there. So, take a hint. Stay home. We'll have a better time without you. I heard Rebecca's voice in the background, clear as day. Tell her to send the brisket over, though. Thomas chuckled. Yeah, if you already bought the meat, you can have it delivered. But don't show up. We're done engaging with your negativity. He didn't wait for a response. The line went dead. I stared at the screen. The call ended, notification blurring as hot tears finally spilled over my lashes. I lay there in the hospital bed, cut open and stitched back together, realizing that the physical wound was nothing compared to the evisceration I had just endured. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. For the next hour, I didn't move. I couldn't. The nurses came in to check my vitals, offering sympathetic smiles when they saw the tears streaming silently down my face into my ears, soaking the pillow. They assumed I was in physical pain. They offered me more morphine. I refused. I needed a clear head. I needed to process exactly what had just happened. Tired of pretending to like you. The words echoed in my mind, looping like a broken record. I closed my eyes and let the memories of the last decade wash over me. I wasn't just the daughter. I was the architect of their lives. I was the one who stepped up when Thomas retired early because his back couldn't take the line anymore, even though he spent every weekend golfing. I was the one who paid off the credit card debt Martha accrued from her failed crafting hobbies. I was the one who paid for Rebecca's 3 failed attempts at college and her current lifestyle, as she tried to become an influencer with 400 followers. I looked around the sterile hospital room. Who was here for me? No one. I unlocked my phone again and opened my banking app. It was a habit, a reflex honed by years of managing not just my own logistics career, but the family logistics as well. I scrolled through the automated payments scheduled for the next 3 days. Transfer to Thomas and Martha joint, $800, groceries utilities allowance. Ford credit, $650, lease payment for Thomas's F-150. Verizon wireless, $240, family plan, 4 lines. City Power and Light, $310, past due balance for their house I promised to cover. Venmo to Rebecca, $150, weekly content creation stipend. The list went on. Streaming services, insurance premiums, the internet bill. I had built a golden cage for them, and I had foolishly locked myself inside with them, thinking that if I paid enough, if I supported enough, I would buy their love, or at least their respect. Thomas had called me stiff, boring, a buzzkill. He said I made Rebecca feel judged. Was I judging her when I paid for her camera equipment? Was I judging her when I paid her speeding tickets? He said Martha couldn't relax. Was she unable to relax because I reorganized the kitchen, or because I was the only one who noticed when the fridge was empty and quietly filled it? My sadness began to harden. It cooled, solidifying into something dense and heavy in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was a cold, clinical realization. They viewed me as a utility. I was no different to them than the electricity coming out of the wall or the water flowing from the tap. You don't thank the light switch for working. You only curse it when it doesn't turn on. And they had just told the light switch they didn't like its personality. I wiped my face with the rough hospital sheet. I sat up, wincing at the pull in my side, and reached for the pitcher of water. I poured a glass and drank it slowly. Thomas thought he had all the power because he was the patriarch, the loud voice at the head of the table. He thought that by excluding me, he was punishing me. He thought he could hurt my feelings, take my meat, and have his party. But in his arrogance, in his rush to humiliate me while his golden child Rebecca giggled in the background, he had forgotten one crucial thing. Every single service, every asset, and every convenience they enjoyed wasn't just paid for by me. It was owned by me. The accounts were in my name. The passwords were mine. The legal liability was mine. I looked at the phone again. A notification popped up. Data usage warning. Rebecca iPhone 14 has used 80% of monthly data. I let out a small, dry chuckle. It hurt my stomach, but it felt good. You're tired of pretending, I whispered to the empty room. Okay, Dad, let's see how much you enjoy reality. To understand why this phone call was the nuclear option, you have to understand the dynamic of the house I grew up in. Thomas was a factory foreman for 30 years. He was a man who commanded respect through volume and intimidation. He was the king of his castle, and he raised us to believe that his word was law. But when the factory offered early retirement packages 10 years ago, he took it, assuming his pension would cover a life of luxury. It didn't. That was right when I was getting my first big promotion in logistics. I was 24, hungry, and making good money. I saw my parents struggling, lights being turned off, pasta for dinner 5 nights a week, and I stepped in. "I'll handle the electric bill, Dad," I had said, "just until you get settled. I'll put the truck on my insurance, Dad. It's cheaper that way. I'll pick up the groceries this week, Mom." Just until turned into a decade. Then there was Martha. My mother loved the idea of being a matriarch, but she hated the work. She wanted to be the grandmother who baked cookies, using ingredients I bought, and hosted holidays in a house I paid to heat, but she had no spine. She echoed whatever opinion Thomas held. If Thomas thought I was working too much, Martha would sigh and say, "Nicola, you really should find a husband instead of chasing dollars." And finally, Rebecca. Rebecca was 29 going on 16. She was the baby, the creative soul. She had floated from fashion school to cosmetology school to PH. Autography, quitting each one when it got too toxic, meaning they expected her to show up on time. Now she was an influencer. She lived in the master suite of my parents' house. They had moved into the guest room to give her space to create. She drove a car I had co-signed for. She ate food I paid for. And she hated me. She hated me because I was the mirror she didn't want to look into. Every time I came over in my work clothes, exhausted but successful, it was a reminder of what she wasn't doing. So she poisoned the well. She would whisper to Thomas that I was condescending. She would tell Martha that I looked down on them. The irony was, I didn't look down on them. I looked out for them. I remembered a specific incident 3 months ago. The furnace had died in the dead of winter. Thomas had called me, panicking. "It's freezing, Nicola. The repair guy wants $4,000 for a new unit." I was in a meeting with a client in Tokyo. I stepped out, risking my job, and called a contact I knew in HVAC. I got them a new unit installed that same day, at cost, and paid the invoice instantly. When I came over that weekend to check on it, Thomas didn't say thank you. He kicked the new furnace and said, "Damn thing is louder than the old one. Your guy ripped us off." Rebecca had chimed in from the couch, not looking up from her phone. "Yeah, Nicola, I couldn't even record my stories because of the noise. You should have checked with us first." I had swallowed my anger then. I told myself that family is family, and you help them no matter what. I told myself they were just stressed. But lying in that hospital bed, the fog of denial finally lifted. They weren't stressed, they were parasites. The antagonist wasn't just Thomas and his cruelty. It was the entire ecosystem I had sustained. Thomas was the loud, bullying face of it, but Rebecca was the architect of my isolation, and Martha was the silent accomplice. Thomas was a man who prided himself on being a self-made man and the head of the household, yet he hadn't paid a utility bill since 2014. He walked around town bragging about his truck, his home, his successful retirement. He had built his entire identity on a lie that I was financing. And now he wanted to cut me out. He wanted to humiliate me to impress the relatives coming to the barbecue. He wanted to look like the big man who put his uppity daughter in her place. I imagined him right now, sitting in his recliner, probably drinking a beer I paid for, laughing with Rebecca about how they told me off. They were probably planning the menu for Saturday. Saturday. The barbecue was in 3 days. I pulled up my family expenses spreadsheet on my phone. My thumb hovered over the rows of data. If I was a stranger to them, if I was someone they were tired of pretending to like, then surely they wouldn't want to accept charity from a stranger. It would be insulting to Thomas's pride, wouldn't it? I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't even going to call them back. In logistics, when a client defaults on a contract or violates the terms of service, we don't send emotional letters. We initiate a service stoppage. We cut the supply chain. I opened the app for the local power company. I didn't sleep that night. The hospital was noisy, sure, but the real noise was in my head. I spent the hours between 2:00 a.m. and dawn doing what I do best, auditing. I treated my family like a failing supply chain node. In my line of work, when a supplier becomes unreliable and costs exceed the value of goods received, you don't get emotional. You look at the contract, you find the exit clauses, and you terminate. I had my laptop. My sister had dropped it off 2 days ago, complaining that I better not ask her to bring anything else, and I opened a fresh Excel sheet. I titled it Operation Reality Check. First, I logged into the utility portal. The account for the family home, a sprawling 4-bedroom ranch that Thomas insisted on keeping despite the maintenance costs, was in my name. I had taken it over 6 years ago when Thomas forgot to pay the bill for 3 months and they were facing a disconnect in January. I navigated to the Service Status tab. Current balance, $0, autopay active. Scheduled service address, 1402 Maple Drive. I clicked Stop Service. A warning box popped up. Are you sure? This will disconnect power to the residence on the selected date. I selected the date, Saturday, July 15th, the day of the barbecue. I selected the time window, 12:00 p.m. to 00:00 p.m. Thomas liked to serve the food at 1:00 p.m. sharp. He needed the electric smoker for the brisket, the oversized commercial fans to keep the patio cool, and the specialized outdoor sound system to blast his classic rock playlist. I clicked Confirm. Next, the internet. The Gigabit Ultimate package Rebecca insisted she needed for her uploads. I canceled it, effective Friday at midnight. No Wi-Fi for the guests, no streaming, no posting stories. Then came the hardest part, purely from a sentimental standpoint, the truck. It was a Ford F-150 King Ranch, beautiful, leather interior, fully loaded. Thomas treated that truck better than he treated his children. He washed it twice a week, but his credit was shot from the business venture, a pyramid scheme he fell for in 2018. So the lease was in my name. I paid the $650 a month. I paid the insurance. I logged into the Ford credit portal. The lease had 4 months left before the buyout option. I read the fine print on early termination. I could do a voluntary surrender. It would hit my credit score slightly, but I had an 820. I could take the bruised knee. But then I saw another option, schedule end-of-lease pickup. I didn't need to surrender it early and tank my credit. I just needed to exercise my right as the lessee to reclaim the asset. I initiated a request for a vehicle recovery due to unauthorized driver. Technically, Thomas wasn't listed as the primary driver on the insurance policy anymore. I was. He was a permitted operator, a permission I was about to revoke. I arranged for a tow service, a private contractor we used at work for repossession of fleet vehicles. I scheduled it for Monday morning. I didn't want to ruin the entirety of their weekend with the truck. The lack of electricity would be enough for Saturday. The truck would be the Monday morning hangover cure. As I dug deeper into the bank statements to ensure I had caught every automatic payment, I noticed something odd. There was a recurring charge on my secondary credit card, the one I had given Martha for emergencies only 3 years ago when she needed to pick up prescriptions. Pending transaction, SCPHORA, $245 pending transaction. ULTA Beauty, $180 pending transaction. Liquor Barn, $310. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. This card wasn't just for emergencies. They had been using it for months. I scrolled back. Thousands of dollars. Makeup, alcohol, clothes. I clicked on the transaction details for the Liquor Barn charge. It was dated yesterday. They were buying the booze for the party I wasn't invited to, using my credit card. I wasn't just a buzzkill, I was the caterer. I picked up my phone and called the credit card fraud department. I'd like to report unauthorized activity, I told the agent, my voice steady and cold. And I need to cancel this card immediately. No, don't send a replacement to the address on file. That address is compromised. By the time the sun came up, I had dismantled the entire financial infrastructure of 1402 Maple Drive. I lay back against the pillows, exhausted but strangely energized. I had stopped the bleeding. I was discharged on Friday afternoon. I didn't go to my parents' house. I took an Uber to my own apartment, a quiet, modern sanctuary downtown that my family rarely visited because parking was a hassle. Saturday arrived with a heat wave. It was 95 degrees with 90% humidity. A sweltering, suffocating blanket of heat. I sat in my air-conditioned living room, drinking iced tea, my phone on the coffee table. 12:00 p.m. came and went. 1:00 p.m. I imagined the scene. The brisket would be halfway done in the electric smoker. The guests, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in a year, would be arriving. Thomas would be holding court, a beer in hand, probably making a joke about how Nicola couldn't make it. She's too busy being a CEO. Rebecca would be trying to film a TikTok of the table set up. 1:30 p.m. My phone lit up. Incoming call, Dad. I let it ring. It rang again immediately. Then a text from Rebecca, "Did you forget to pay the bill?" Power just went out, embarrassing. I took a sip of my tea. I didn't reply. Then a call from Martha, then Thomas again. Finally, at 1:45 p.m., I answered. "Hello." "Nicola." Thomas didn't just speak, he exploded. I could hear the background noise, not music and laughter, but confused murmuring and the distinct beep of a smoke detector with a dying battery. "The power is out. The smoker stopped. The AC is off. We have 30 people here and it's a sauna." "Oh," I said calmly, "that sounds unfortunate." "Unfortunate? It's a disaster. The meat is going to spoil. I checked the breaker, it's fine. Did you pay the bill? I bet you forgot to pay the damn bill with your surgery drama." "I didn't forget, Dad," I said. I kept my voice low, smooth, professional. "I canceled it." There was a silence on the other end, so profound I thought the call had dropped. "You what?" "I canceled the service," I repeated. "I was reviewing my finances while I was in the hospital. You know, since I had so much free time not going to the barbecue. And I realized that I was paying for a house I don't live in, for a party I'm not welcome at." "Are you insane?" Thomas roared. The pretense of the kindly patriarch vanished. He was the bully now. "Turn it back on, right now." "Uncle Jerry is here. The food is raw. You are embarrassing us." "I think you're embarrassing yourself, Dad," I replied. "You told me everyone was tired of pretending to like me. Well, I accepted that. And since we aren't close anymore, I figured you wouldn't feel comfortable accepting charity from someone you despise. That's how pride works, right?" "This isn't charity, it's family duty," he screamed. I heard Rebecca screeching in the background. My live stream cut out. My Wi-Fi is gone. "Duty goes both ways," I said. "You wanted me gone, I'm gone. And my wallet went with me. You have a pension, Dad. I'm sure you can call the power company and set up an account in your own name. They might be able to rush a connection by Monday." "Monday?" He sounded like he was choking. "We have guests now." "Then I guess you better order pizza." "Oh, wait, don't use the blue credit card. I reported it stolen yesterday." "You reported it stolen?" His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Martha was at the store." "I saw," I said. "Liquor barn, $300 on a card for medical emergencies." "That's fraud, Dad. I canceled it." "You ungrateful little bitch," he spat. "You turn this power back on or—" "Or what?" I interrupted, my voice hardening. "You'll uninvite me again? You have no leverage, Thomas, none. Enjoy the heat." I hung up. I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb and opened a book, but I didn't read. I stared at the wall, my heart racing. It was the first time in my life I had ever hung up on him. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of freedom. The weekend silence was deafening, but it wasn't peaceful. I knew they were scrambling. I checked my social media on Sunday morning. I had been blocked by Rebecca, but I had a burner account I used for market research. I looked up her profile. She had posted a long, tearful video via her cellular data from a Starbucks parking lot. "Some people are just so toxic," she cried to the camera, wiping away a dry tear. "My own sister sabotaged our family reunion. She literally cut the power because she was jealous she wasn't the center of attention. My dad is heartbroken. We're victims of financial abuse." The comments were a mix of sympathy and confusion. "OMG, that's awful. And wait, why does she pay your power bill if it's your dad's house?" Rebecca was deleting the questions faster than they could appear. They were trying to control the narrative. They were painting me as the vindictive, crazy spinster who lashed out because she wasn't loved. They were rallying the extended family. I had 3 missed calls from Aunt Linda, likely calling to lecture me on respecting my elders. But I wasn't done. Monday morning, 8:00 a.m. I drove to the house. I parked my modest sedan across the street, 2 houses down. I wasn't going in. I was just there to sign the paperwork. At 8:15 a.m., the flatbed tow truck arrived. It was a massive vehicle, yellow and loud. The driver, a burly man named Mike whom I had spoken to on the phone, pulled up right in front of the driveway where the F-150 was gleaming in the morning sun. I got out of my car and walked over. The front door of the house flew open. Thomas marched out, still wearing his pajama pants and a stained t-shirt. He looked haggard. The heat without AC for 2 days must have been brutal. "What the hell is this?" Thomas shouted, marching down the driveway. "Get that truck away from my driveway." Mike, the driver, stepped out with a clipboard. He was calm, professional, and twice Thomas's size. Picking up a 2022 Ford F-150. Leaseholder requested recovery. "Leaseholder?" Thomas turned purple. "I'm the owner, that's my truck." "Actually," I said, stepping onto the sidewalk, "it's not." Thomas whipped around. He looked at me with pure hatred. "You." Martha and Rebecca appeared in the doorway. Rebecca had her phone out, filming. "You're trying to steal his truck now?" Rebecca yelled for her audience. "Look at this, guys. She's literally stealing our property." "It's not his property," I said, loud enough for the neighbor, Mr. Henderson, who was watering his lawn, to hear. "The lease is in my name, nickel advance. I pay the $650 a month. I pay the insurance. And since I'm tired of pretending, I'm tired of paying for a truck I don't drive." "You gave that to me," Thomas screamed, advancing on me. Mike stepped in between us, his arms crossed. "I let you use it," I corrected him. "Under the assumption that you were my father who loved me, but since I'm just a buzzkill and a bank account, the deal is off." "I paid for the upgrades," Thomas shouted, desperate now. "I put the lift kit on it. I put the bed liner in." "With what money, Dad?" I asked. I pulled a folded stack of papers from my bag. "With the money from the home repair loan you asked me to co-sign 3 years ago, the one you said was for a new roof." I held up the bank statement I had, unearthed during my Saturday audit. "I looked into it, Dad. The roof was never replaced. You patched it. The $15,000, it went to DraftKings and a consulting fee for Rebecca's business." Rebecca lowered her phone. Her face went pale. "That's a lie," Martha cried out from the porch, finding her voice. "We used that for the house." "The bank records don't lie, Mom," I said, waving the paper. "I checked the transfer history. You guys didn't just use me for bills, you defrauded me. You lied about repairs to get cash to gamble and play pretend influencer." Thomas looked at the neighbors. Mr. Henderson was staring, open-mouthed. The illusion of the successful, retired foreman was cracking in real time. "You can't take the truck," Thomas whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and fear. "I need it. I have errands." "You have legs," I said coldly. I turned to Mike. "Take it." "No," Thomas lunged for the door handle of the F-150. "I'm not giving you the keys." "I have the spare set," I said, tossing them to Mike. Mike caught them, hopped into the cab, and fired up the engine. The rumble of the V8, usually Thomas's pride and joy, now sounded like a death knell. As the truck was loaded onto the flatbed, Thomas stood in the driveway, defeated, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. But it wasn't remorse on his face. It was panic. "Nicola," he said, his tone shifting to a pathetic wheedle. "Nicola, wait, let's talk about this. You're overreacting. We can fix this. The neighbors are watching." "Let them watch," I said. "Maybe they can explain to you why fraud is a bad idea." But as Mike secured the chains, Rebecca ran down the driveway, her phone back up. "You think you're so smart?" she hissed, the camera lens inches from my face. "Wait until everyone finds out you abandoned your sick parents. I'm going to ruin you." I looked into the lens of her phone, then at Thomas, then at the empty spot where the truck used to be. "You don't have to ruin me, Rebecca," I said calmly. "I just stopped saving you." I turned to walk back to my car, but Thomas shouted one last thing. "You walk away now and you're out of the will, you get nothing. The house, the bonds, everything goes to Rebecca." I stopped, I turned back slowly. "The will?" I asked, a bitter smile touching my lips. "Dad, do you really think I don't know?" "Know what?" "I ran a title search on the house this morning," I said, the final nail in the coffin. "You don't have a house to leave anyone." The summons came on Tuesday, not from Thomas or Rebecca, but from Aunt Linda. Linda was my father's older sister, the self-appointed matriarch of the extended clan. She was a woman who believed in keeping up appearances above all else, and she had summoned me to what she termed a family mediation. "You need to come over here, Nicola," she had said, her voice dripping with disappointed authority. "Your parents are sitting in the dark. Your father is chest-clutching. We are all here. You need to look them in the eye and explain why you're trying to kill them." I could have refused. I could have blocked her number and stayed in my cool, quiet apartment, but the accountant in me needed to close the books properly. I couldn't leave the ledger open-ended. I needed to present the final audit. I arrived at 1402 Maple Drive at 6:00 p.m. The scene was almost pathetic. A loud, gas-powered generator, likely borrowed from Uncle Jerry, was chugging away on the front lawn, running a single extension cord through the front window. The lawn, usually manicured by a service I paid for, was already looking shaggy. I walked inside. The house was stifling. The generator was only powering a box fan and the refrigerator. The central AC was dead silent. In the living room, it looked like a tribunal. Thomas sat in his recliner, looking deflated and sweaty, holding a wet rag to his forehead. Martha was weeping softly on the sofa. Rebecca was sitting cross-legged on the floor, looking petulant, while Aunt Linda, Uncle Jerry, and two cousins stood with their arms crossed, forming a wall of judgment. "She's here," Rebecca muttered, not looking up from her phone. "Nicola," Aunt Linda stepped forward. "I am appalled, truly appalled. I knew you were career-focused, but I didn't think you were heartless. Look at your father, he's a wreck." "He looks hot," I said calmly, remaining standing near the entryway. "Maybe he should pay the electric bill." "This isn't about bills," Uncle Jerry barked. "It's about respect. You repossessed his truck, you cut off their resources. These people raised you." "I raised them," I corrected, my voice steady. "For 10 years, I have carried this family. I have paid every significant bill. I have bylaid them out of debt. And in return, I was told I was a buzzkill and that everyone was tired of pretending to like me. So, I stopped paying for the privilege of being insulted." "That was just talk," Thomas groaned from the chair. "People say things when they're stressed. You didn't have to go nuclear." "It wasn't stress, Dad. It was the truth. You said it on speakerphone while you laughed," I replied. "But we're past that now. You mentioned the will on Monday. You threatened to cut me out and leave the house to Rebecca." I walked over to the coffee table and dropped a thick manila envelope onto it. The sound echoed in the silent room. "What is this?" Aunt Linda asked, eyeing the envelope suspiciously. "The truth," I said. "Dad tried to threaten me with my inheritance. The problem is there is no inheritance. Thomas doesn't own this house. The room went dead silent. Even the generator outside seemed to quiet down. Of course I own it, Thomas shouted, sitting up, his face flushing red. I paid the mortgage off in '98. You did, I nodded. And then, 5 years ago, you took out a reverse mortgage with a predatory lender because you wanted to invest in that crypto opportunity your buddy told you about. Remember? You forged Mom's signature on the consent forms. Martha stopped crying. She lifted her head, her eyes wide. What? I didn't want to bring this up, I continued, addressing the room but looking straight at Thomas. I found out 3 years ago when a delinquency notice came to my email because my name is attached to the utility accounts at this address. The lender thought I was the homeowner. I investigated. Dad took a lump sum payout of nearly $200,000 against the equity of the house. $200,000, Rebecca gasped. Where is it? Gone, I said. Gambled, lost on bad investments, spent on keeping up the image of the wealthy retiree. I pointed to the documents. The terms of the reverse mortgage are strict. You have to maintain the property. You have to pay the property taxes and insurance. I've been paying the insurance, Dad. I stopped that on Monday, too. Thomas looked like he was shrinking into the chair. His bluster was gone. He looked like a cornered animal. Also, I added, delivering the final blow. The contract states that if the home is not the primary residence of the borrower, or if the borrower cannot maintain utilities and upkeep, the loan becomes due immediately. With the power cut and the insurance lapsed, the lender will be notified within 30 days. They will foreclose. You can't let that happen, Aunt Linda stammered, looking from me to Thomas. Nicola, you have money, you can fix this. You can pay the insurance. You can pay the utilities. I could, I agreed. But why would I? Rebecca is the heir, right? The house goes to her? Well, here's the reality. The house has negative equity. If Dad dies or moves out, the bank takes it. Rebecca, you aren't inheriting a house. You're inheriting an eviction notice. Rebecca stood up, her fists clenched. She turned on Thomas. Dad, is that true? Did you spend the money? You said you had a portfolio. I was trying to build something, Thomas yelled, his voice cracking. I was trying to get rich for us. You were gambling, I snapped. And now it's over. The masquerade is done. I looked at Aunt Linda. You wanted to mediate? Here is the settlement. Thomas and Martha are broke. They are living in a house the bank owns, burning gas they can't afford, waiting for a foreclosure. I am the only reason they lasted this long, and I am done. Nicola, please, Martha finally spoke. Her voice was trembling. She stood up and reached a hand toward me. Please, we're sorry. We shouldn't have said those things. We need you. We can't lose the house. Where will we go? I don't know, Mom, I said, feeling a strange, hollow sadness in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It was pity. Maybe you can stay with Aunt Linda. She seems very concerned about family duty. Aunt Linda took a sharp step back, her eyes widening in panic. Now, hold on, I don't have the room. There you go, I said, picking up my purse. Everyone is family until the check arrives. Goodbye. I turned and walked out. Behind me, the shouting began. It wasn't directed at me anymore. Rebecca was screaming at Thomas. Martha was sobbing. Uncle Jerry was yelling about the generator. I walked out into the humid evening air, got into my car, and drove away. I didn't look back. The fallout was swift and brutal. Without my financial shield, reality crashed down on 1402 Maple Drive like a tidal wave. I didn't need to do anything else. Gravity took over. Within a week, the lender was notified of the lapsed insurance. Foreclosure proceedings began faster than I expected, likely because they had been looking for a reason to seize the asset for years. Thomas tried to fight it, but he had no money for a lawyer. He called me 7 times a day for the first week. Voicemails that ranged from screaming rage, "You ungrateful traitor," to pathetic sobbing, "Nicola, baby, please, I'm an old man, you can't let me live on the street." I didn't block the numbers. I archived them. I needed them for the restraining order I eventually had to file when Thomas showed up at my office building, trying to scream at the security guards to let him in. That was a turning point for me. Seeing my father, the man who used to terrify me with his booming voice, being escorted off the premises by a 20-year-old security guard named Dave. It broke the last chain of fear I had. He wasn't a monster. He was just a sad, angry man who had made bad choices. The house was foreclosed on 2 months later. The family drama spilled onto social media, of course. Rebecca tried to spin the narrative again, but it backfired. When she posted about being homeless, people dug up her old posts, the expensive trips, the designer bags, the truck, and asked why she didn't sell them. She was exposed as a fraud. She ended up moving in with a boyfriend she had only known for 3 weeks. Last I heard, that didn't last, and she was couch-surfing with friends from high school who were rapidly losing patience with her. Thomas and Martha were forced into a small, subsidized one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It was a stark drop from the 4-bedroom ranch. Their social circle evaporated. Aunt Linda and Uncle Jerry stopped inviting them over, claiming they didn't want to get in the middle of it. But really, they were terrified Thomas would ask for money. As for me, the silence in my life wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. I had spent my entire adult life bracing for impact, waiting for the next crisis, the next bill, the next demand. Now my money was my own. My time was my own. 2 weeks after the foreclosure was final, I met my friend Sarah for dinner. Sarah had been my college roommate, the one person who had told me for years that my family was toxic. I had always brushed her off, defending them. We sat on the patio of a nice Italian restaurant. I ordered a bottle of wine, an expensive Barolo that I would have never bought before because Dad needs truck payment money. To freedom, Sarah said, raising her glass. To reality, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. How do you feel? She asked, her eyes searching my face for signs of regret. I took a sip of the wine. It was rich, complex, and perfect. I feel like I just set down a backpack filled with rocks that I've been carrying since I was 22, I said honestly. I miss the idea of them, Sarah. I miss the idea of having a dad who is proud of me and a sister who is my friend, but I don't miss them. That's the grief, Sarah said softly. You're mourning the family you deserved, not the one you had. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It was a small gesture, but it meant more to me than 1,000 hollow "I love yous" from my father. That was my reconciliation. Not with the abusers who viewed me as an ATM, but with the part of myself that believed I had to pay for love. I had finally learned the most important lesson of supply chain logistics. You cannot sustain a system that produces nothing but waste. You have to cut the line. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from a strange number. Nikki, it's Mom. We're at the apartment. The AC is broken here too. Dad is really struggling. Please, just $500. We learned our lesson. We love you. I looked at the message. I looked at the word love tacked onto the end like a price tag. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt done. I pressed block. Then I poured another glass of wine and ordered the calamari. I had a life to live, and for the first time in forever, I could actually afford to enjoy it.